Hey everybody, welcome to Narrative Live. I was going to play a whole intro tune for us, but we don't have our show tune tonight, so we're just here. Hi, how you doing, Eric?
We're, I'm doing great.
I
I'm,
mean, I
I'm
have
entertained.
one, but I don't have it playing. I pressed the wrong button.
We could beatbox. We could do show tunes. We have options here.
You know what I'd really like to do? I really want to geek out on everything that happened at the Department of Justice today, because it was a bit of a big day there. Things happened, as what might say, and it involves a lot of Flynn. It involves a little bit of Barr, and it involves a lot about justice. So,
Yes.
without further ado, let's go to. Here's a jingle for you. The starting block. All right, so three big stories. Let's begin with the Michael Flynn case. Tell me exactly what happened there. Something big happened.
Well, first of all, Michael Flynn started playing footsie with the Russians and taking money from them when he shouldn't have. And then a guy, a mobster from Queens, you mean you want me to skip ahead?
What
I mean, it's
happened
actually
today?
very quick.
What happened today would be interesting. But yeah,
Well, I was only giving one more sentence. There's
Okay.
there's this guy who's working with this mobster to help him become president with the help of the Russians and other fun characters. And against everyone else's predictions, the mobster guy wins.
Wow.
And then they're like, well, we're going to make our guy who could not possibly get clearance again after taking 50 grand from the Russians, because they really don't like that kind of thing. So he'd be having trouble getting a basic analyst job in the intelligence community at this point. We're going to make him national security advisor, which they announced that they're going to do. And meanwhile, while there's already a president and a national security advisor, Barack Obama and Susan Rice, this guy, Flynn, who's going to be national security advisor, even though he really shouldn't be able to get that position, goes around working against that government, like talking to the Russians and other folks about all the things they're going to do. In other words, making the foreign policy of the United States and helping, Russia get better positioned and to block the policy initiatives of the current president, which is
meant to be
bad.
one president at a time. That's sort of the rule.
One at a time.
Democracy
That's
works like
rule.
that. Yeah, if you break the
Right.
rules, it gets confusing. People don't know who to trust.
Yes.
Not a good idea.
Because am I president this week? Are you?
Yeah.
Are you prime minister of Canada?
Yeah.
What are we going to do?
Who knows? I mean, it could be either. But let's go through.
So there are rules.
There are rules.
So,
and your sentences are much longer than just the average person's sentence as well. But you know what's really amazing? Your threads, when you get going, riffing as you do on things that are important, your threads are hilarious. In fact, they're so hilarious. I just want to go through this one. I just want to let you run through this one because it's so darn funny. I hope you can read it. I can. So, but you go ahead and tell us what happened today. This is Judge Gleason, right? That came up today.
Right. So the rest of the long story short, it's Mike Flynn lies to the FBI about what he did, and then they catch him, and they're like, "We're going to put you in prison for a long, long time." And he's like, "Oh, stop! I'll help you. I'll plead guilty to lying, and I'll help you." And then they said, "Okay, we'll do that." And then in 2017, he pleaded guilty. And then as time went on, he's like, "Wait a minute, no, I'm kind of unguilty. Maybe you did something wrong." And
he didn't only plead guilty; he also admitted to a whole bunch of other things, right? Like it wasn't just I also did this, and then that person did this, and it went on for a bit.
Oh, when you take a plea deal, you have to confess to your crime and every other crime that you know about, whether you were in it or not. You have to proffer that information, right. And if you skip bits, they can yank your plea deal. So he decided to go back on that somewhere in 2018, 2019. And so now here we are, and they want to sentence him for the thing that he signed off a deal with this judge, Emmett Sullivan, in the District of Columbia, one of the federal districts at the trial level. He made this deal. You don't prosecute me for the zillion things that could send me to prison until the sun goes out. And then I'll just not be a pain in the butt about it. And then he's being a pain in the butt.
But it was a tiny little charge, really, compared to everything he really did. This is basically, it's the lowest crime they could find to charge him with and for him to plead guilty to. And yet he's still protesting about that one.
That's right. And he was up for a couple of weeks of prison or, just supervised release. And they don't even want that.
Mm.
And I think there's a reason for this, that
Mm.
Barr and all these other knuckleheads are trying so hard. It's because they want to give everybody who is a co-conspirator of Trump, various other mobs, other foreign agents, they want them to think that, oh, no, Trump could get you off and we're going to see if maybe Biden won't be president, because everybody's done such very bad things
They have
that
indeed.
that they don't. These guys at the center of the conspiracy do not want the little guys to confess. And just as an American citizen and as an analyst and somebody who's read all these papers, make any deal you can. Flip, proffer, take the deal. Make a guilty plea deal. You're not getting out of this.
Yeah. And now's the time. History is about to judge people, final judgments of people in terms of how they acted in the last few years, I believe.
They've judged. History's in sentencing phase now. Yeah, it's nasty.
Yeah. So, but what's interesting today and in these last few days is a judge in a court has actually started hearing evidence related to the Mueller report, which we've never really. We sort of has appeared in there, but not in this way. That there is now two judges in a court discussing stuff that was already decided. So we're relitigating it.
Well, are you talking about the filing of Judge Gleason, the amicus curiae?
I am talking about that. I was surprised to read everything I was reading there. I was like, oh yeah, let's go back into this. This is interesting.
This is at the heart of this case, and that's why today is such a big deal, because Judge Gleason, and let's just remember that Judge Gleason took down John Gotti and the Gambinos, and he's a legendary federal mob prosecutor and federal judge, extremely well respected, and he was chosen by Emmett Sullivan, who is giving the maximum amount of latitude in his court. This is a federal judge with a lifetime appointment. These guys like to run their court their way. You got a problem with it, you can appeal, which they are doing even before he's made a decision. That's what's going on up at the Circuit Court of Appeals level in D.C. And that case starts Friday, which makes the timing today so interesting, because we have Judge Gleason was appointed by Emmett Sullivan, who's giving all this latitude to go, oh, well, let's discuss this. No problem. You want to, Mr. Barr, you want to step in with your interim U.S. attorney for the District of Columbia, Shea, who is not even in that job anymore. He replaced Jessie Liu, who was the U.S. attorney there, got rid of her, and they brings his guy Shea in there, who isn't even there. He's now at the DEA. They couldn't even keep him in there that long. And they said, oh, we're going to unprosecute, which is not a thing. And this is what gets decided today, or what we're currently deciding, is about the Federal Criminal Rule of Procedure, Rule 48A, which was enacted in the 20th century to keep it so that if anyone might be able to bribe a prosecutor to let them out after the fact, like let's say you get nervous, you take a deal, like you agree to plead guilty, and then some people with money and influence come in and say, maybe we could corrupt the prosecutor. Well, that was happening hypothetically, I believe in the 1930s, and they came up with this rule of procedure for everyone that says, no. The prosecutor can't just get rid of that. There's another party to the case. There's a third party. There's the litigant, there's the defendant in the criminal rules. There is the prosecutor, and there's the judge, and all three must agree, and they must sign. That's a deal. Instead of a jury trial and the full measure of substantive due process under the 4th and 14th Amendments, your right to a fair trial with jury of your peers, you forego that, and the prosecutors forego that, and you're going to get a lighter sentence, but you got to make a deal, and it's a binding contract with the court. So there's three parties to that. There's the prosecutors, there's the defendant, and there's the judge. And up until Rule 48A, which demands leave of court, which means you got to ask the judge if you want to drop those charges.
Right.
Before that, maybe if the prosecutor's like, no, he's cool. Actually, we were wrong. He's cool.
Yeah.
They could get rid of the case. And they decided that's too open to corruption. Right. We need to have the judge in there to say, no, I'm a party to this. And before I let this person go, you need to tell me what's wrong. Did you get the case completely wrong? Was one of your line level prosecutors corrupt? And now you just realize this guy was intimidated. He was tricked, something like that. And you're totally wrong. We'll just admit that that's what that was. And, okay, the court will take that into consideration. But I kind of want to hear from you, the prosecutor and the government, what was the deal that's so special that we're going to undo what we all agreed on? And so that's what Rule 48A guarantees. It doesn't guarantee the judge is going to go one way or the other, but it says, explain this to me, because this is unusual, which it is. Everyone's agreed. The defendant, like in this case, Michael Flynn, has agreed, oh, yes, I did everything they said and more, and I'm not lying, and they are not coercing me. I'm not tricked. I have not been trapped. I agree to this wholeheartedly, and I will not go back on my word or under pain of perjury. That's their deal. And now they're like, wait, you don't mean any of that. And they're like, well, and so Judge Sullivan is to hear many of the actual legal experts and the people who are filing amicus briefs. They're saying, no, this is exactly why Rule 48A exists, to just ask the judge for his leave. And he is giving so much latitude. He's like, okay, well, explain it to me. File some briefs. And as soon as they wanted to file briefs, the Flynn people and the Barr people were like, no! Well, I thought you wanted to discuss this. In fact, and it got really controversial. It was like, well, no problem. Well, let's take me out of this. Let's get an amicus curiae, somebody with real knowledge about these things. I know the guy who took down John Gotti and the Gambinos.
Ah, that guy.
You happy, Mr. Trump? Are you? Oh, we've got a legal expert here who'd love to offer dispassionate and expert top-level advice on this. Another judge who's retired, who doesn't have a dog in this fight.
And knows the territory.
American people.
Yeah. Right.
Knows the territory. And
Mr. Gleason,
and they're
Judge
like,
Gleason
no!
You're very slow.
Judge
Sentences are getting
Gleason
longer and longer. Are we going to go through this thread?
There's a lot going on.
I know. Let's do this because we're going to.
All right, we're now. Okay.
Do you like your new name?
I
must like you because I gave you a whole name today on a little banner. You see, that's very nice. There you go. This is clearly just a live.
So Gleason has spoken, and he's like, all right. Here's what I think of your whole argument about not having this. All
right, so walk me through this. So let's go to the first one here. We've got. What are you saying in this first? I've got the ring of death showing up. What is going on here in this first little section?
I start with a conclusion. For the foregoing reasons, the court appointed an amicus curiae, Judge Gleason, respectfully submits that the government's motion to dismiss should be denied and no order to show cause why Flynn should not be held in criminal contempt should issue. He's saying the motion to dismiss this case, the plea deal should stand. Oh, but I don't think you should bother charging him with perjury or contempt. Just throw on extra prison time onto what he's already done.
Okay, so now we're at Rule 48.
Rule 48. He was making a comment about how the arguments of the government so far conform to Rule 48, and I summed that up as this is extra special level of stupid bullshit. So
yes, you did it a very funny way. You got your bullshit count was up a lot today. You must have outdone yourself.
Well, because you know what, when I'm taking in my interpretation and translation, you got to take some of the fancy words and go, what are they saying here? They're saying there's no merit to this argument, that you are using a lot of words to say nothing. You are pretending to ignore the very bedrock principles here. And the common vernacular for that is a bunch of bullshit in the United States. Right. And so that's how I
roll. Bullshit. And so here we get to the Chewbacca defense, which is a reference to a very funny thing in South Park.
Yes.
And tell us about that.
Well, in this one episode of South Park, they bring on Johnny Cochran, who defended O.J. Simpson and who just has a lot of bluster. And he says, Chewbacca living on Endor, that does not make sense. And if it does not make sense, you must acquit. It's just a completely nonsensical argument that is just full of a lot of words. And so I compare what I think, I can't speak on the judge's behalf, but what I think Judge Gleason is saying is this is even worse than the Chewbacca defense. This is complete garbage. How could you possibly believe any of this crap?
I mean, they are riddled with inexplicable and elementary errors of law and fact. Wow. That's not missing words. Like, he goes right for there. That's interesting. Cool.
We would fail a first-year law student for this shit. Right. Yes.
So that's not a.
You've missed facts. You've missed the law, and This is the Attorney General's office missing basic facts and basic law.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's not a high standard that they're arguing there.
No.
So
No, not at all.
Chewbacca defense.
Got it. Okay. And he also says, what's this line about prevents the abuse of the uncontrollable power of and dismissal previously enjoyed by prosecutors? What does that mean?
That's the reason for Rule 48, that the prosecutor cannot just roll in and blow away the deal with the judge.
Okay, got it. So now Chewbacca defense as interpreted by someone on YouTube.
Legal Eagles, great program, and it'll teach a lot about the law.
Free advertising there, and we can't play because I'll get no audio now from there, but I'll go look at it afterwards. And now we're at the, what's this? The second dirty bullshit. Dirty bullshit.
Yeah, the court should deny leave because there's clear evidence of, I forget if it's a perversion, something nasty about prosecutorial power, and then guard against dubious dismissal of cases that would benefit the powerful and well-connected defendants. This is the rationale behind Rule 48 in the federal.
We don't like corruption. Let's try avoid it.
This is
a fair system.
On top of it, it's dirty. It's not just stupid. It's also filthy, corrupt, dirty. Okay,
so I get the whole thing on here. Okay,
I'm reading this thing. I'm like, I believe on the internet they might say he's on fire. I would put up a bunch of fire emojis for what this, no doubt better spoken and more articulate judge would say. I mean,
he's lit.
He's lit. He's like, this. How dare you? This is a bunch of horse shit. So
right.
Boom.
And so then this is. I wonder what the reaction was like at the Justice Department as this was coming down today. They must have known, presumably, or do they not know? Does it just show up and Bill Barr gets to handle it as it happens? Actually,
I don't. That is outside of my realm of expertise. I don't know if they get if. Sometimes there are, discussions between attorneys to give each other some hints. Other times things are kept very, very secret. I don't know what would have happened here. But this tweet you have up about not hitting Flynn for perjury, it gets a sense he's like, forget the other prosecutions, just do this one. It should take Flynn's perjury into account, sentencing him on the offense to which he has already admitted guilt. In other words, Gleason had been charged by Sullivan because by definition, you are lying at some point. Either you lied to the court when you pled guilty, or you're lying now that you weren't guilty. So you were lying to this court one way or the other. There's no way out of it. So that means you get a felony charge for lying to a federal judge. Ha! And so
the entire thing was kind of stupid anyhow because he was going to get found guilty anyhow. Because
this whole thing is insane.
Wow.
Yeah, it's how
it's that rule of law.
It's that well, and that's a lot of legal experts have been saying that this is about the rule of law. Do these laws matter? Do these rules, does the 4th and 14th Amendment of the Constitution, does it matter? Or does some corrupt mobster get to grab power for a little while and do whatever the fuck he wants? And that's the question before us. I know what side I'd like to go on.
Oh, yeah.
And I think Gleason has a vote.
He probably does. I hope he does. Okay, so now we get into, what's this? July 2016, the organization WikiLeaks. It goes back to WikiLeaks now. And the FISA application, I guess.
Right. So you were saying, wow, we get to see some Mueller report stuff. Getting caught in the weeds on Rule 48A. I mean, most of the audience will have forgotten that 2 hours from now. But it's like, what background? What is this about? What was Flynn lying about? Collusion with the Russians to help Trump win the presidency.
Big deal.
So that's the first thing the judge goes into. Why are we here, people? Oh, yeah, it was that whole collusion with a hostile foreign power that these guys were up to. That's what this son of a bitch lied about. Now, let's dive into that. Yes, the FBI.
So this is the first time a court has is it the first time a court has discussed this? No, because he's already been found to have perjured himself by lying on this, by lying on this topic.
But I can't recall exactly the indictment or the criminal information or the plea deal, I should say. But very often these, especially in an ongoing matter, they will leave a lot of the facts and anything that might give indications about further investigations. They'll leave those elliptical and they'll go, Your Honor, we've got a guy who has violated 18 U.S. Code subsection 1001, which is lying like an idiot to the FBI because, hint, they have the transcripts of your phone calls. So if they're asking you about phone calls, don't lie. But that's a 6-month maximum penalty in prison, I believe. It's the most basic, and very often the plea deal will go, this guy lied. It won't say everything they asked him, and that's what's in this thread that's so amazing, or sorry, in this court filing that's so amazing, is he's like, what was the FBI investigating? Treason.
Right. So after Barr's efforts to hide all this, to re-summarize, to exonerate the president through all these means that he tried to do, he himself has brought the issue back to the courts and is now allowing a judge to look at it again in the full light of day. Amazing.
Louder and prouder than ever.
Unbelievable moment today that this happened, because wow, what a stupid move. And your guy's still guilty of perjury after all of this. We think it'll happen. So we go back to the Pfizers, we go back to Crossfire Hurricane. This is a well-known territory for all of us. Is there anything important in this little clip here that we need to pay attention to other than that?
Now we can. Russia was considering further intelligence operations. No. Let's go.
Okay.
We're in.
So wow, here we are back in 2016 and 2015. Really, it was 2016, I guess. So what's going on here? This is now the collusion thing again. The foreign official reported that at May 2016 meeting, an advisor of then candidate Donald Trump campaign divulged the Russian contacted the campaign to offer anonymous releases of information. So now we're discussing Pfizer. Sorry.
Yeah, we're talking about the run up to the June 9th meeting with Natalia Veselnitskaya, Russian spies, all that about getting Russian intelligence's help. So we got that. Okay. And it says, the FBI thought that was pretty creepy, and that's what led to the full-blown counterintelligence investigation, not on the candidate himself, but on the people that surrounded him, because they were the idiots going off to London and Moscow to meet with Russian spies and other spies. So
serious and really disturbing, apparently, said the FBI senior leadership. Interesting.
Yeah, they're not big fans of this.
No, considering what may be coming from next week or the week after from the Durham report. Okay, now he goes on to talk about Russians, mobsters, and other Russians. What's happening here?
Well, for an unhinged conspiracy theory, there's just always so many Russians. It's amazing.
I know.
So the Crossfire Hurricane team identified individuals of the Trump campaign who had ties or a history of travel to Russia, and that would mean Moscow Mike Flynn here. So the team opened separate counterintelligence investigation into these individuals as part of the overall investigation into the treason.
And it just talks about people as part of the campaign, not the person who's running for president, right? There's no indication that Trump himself was under a counterintelligence investigation in this, is there?
No, and Comey was very clear about that, and I think that is an important distinction. And they may have discussed it at the time, because it's not the first time we've ever had foreign agents kicking around our political sphere. That's an old story, but it's the first time you've had this level of involvement, this aggression by any set of foreign nations, this much willing participation, but knowing that they're probably we know there were other investigations into Donald Trump and have been for years, including a 6-agency investigation that started in January 2016 that was outside of Crossfire Hurricane. But it's important, I think, and even though it would have been very, very classified at the time, I'm sure that Jim Comey and other members of the FBI would have been saying, wait a minute, we can't be seen investigating the candidates themselves during this period of time, which is what I think what some people were trying to fabricate with getting them to fake reopen the Hillary email thing with Mr. Jason Chaffetz, a former congressman who resigned in the middle of his term, the way nobody ever does, who tweeted out on the old Twitter, FBI's got this case back open. No, congressmen do not get to announce that, but he did a few days before the election. And, this caused a lot of people to go, Jim Comey screwed this whole thing up. The FBI screwed this up, which is what some people wanted. Now, was that, how deep did that conspiracy go? How intentional was it? We have yet to find out. But that's the kind of thing that would make everything really ugly. And there were people that helped make it look ugly. I think the FBI would have known, wait a minute, we can open up a counterintel investigation on the people around Trump, but we got to be careful about the candidate himself or herself, because That's that if this gets seen later, if this ends up in front of Congress or in front of a special investigator, we don't want to be the Stasi of East Germany. We're not a spookocracy like Russia and the KGB. So this makes perfect sense.
So this is the October surprise, the so-called October surprise that happened, and it's really fascinating that, from a kind of macabre, interesting, conspiratorial way, that these guys put together a conspiracy to offset any potential investigation that might happen. They said, well, we'll make them look over there. We'll make them look like they're investigating Clinton. It means that they can't look like they're also investigating Trump suddenly, because it's just too much investigating candidates in political election years.
So Zev, you usually whip a surprise on me. Can I whip a surprise on you?
Yes, do it. Go for it.
Okay. This would the Hillary email thing would make it look like the FBI was spying on one presidential candidate. I have a theory, conspiracy theory, if you will. I think the dossier itself, its production, I think there were people who intended to use that to whip out after Trump lost to make him look like he was under investigation too. And then you have the transnational organized crime's number one enemy, the Federal Bureau of Investigation. You have them coming and going on both parties in the 2016 election, that they were a spookocracy the whole time. And then they make Hillary Clinton's presidency a nightmare. And then in 2020, somebody else steps up.
Because if you're a criminal, an organized crime syndicate leader of some sort, or part of a big syndicate around the world, you would be really happy if the FBI sort of went down during this whole process. That might be a real goal at the end of the day. More than anything else, it might be a real goal because, hey, we get to do our business and the FBI looks like criminals and life goes on. Probably the number one goal.
It's the most powerful law enforcement agency in the history of the world. That's not an exaggeration, given the talent, the technology, the over 100 years. They have emerged as the world's premier law enforcement agency, and it's not close. And they pose the greatest threat, since they're housed within the largest economy in the world. They're your biggest threat, and tied to the NSA, Treasury, FinCEN, the CIA. They're an enormous threat to the mob. So yeah, you don't like the FBI for the same reason that I love the FBI.
So if you were maybe wanting to spoil their plans, you could actually make them happen a few years earlier than expected. One could. Strategically thinking, you could.
It would fall under the category I use sometimes. I'm not saying it's an op, but if it were an op, it'd be a great op.
It would be a great op. Be a good movie too. Someone should make that movie one day. We're living it. All right, so now let's move on. So where are we here? We're moving into the chief among these fools, Mike Flynn. And we're looking at so he's not a stranger in Moscow, is Mr. Flynn, because he's
Gleason piles right in. One individual who fit the criteria for the investigation was this is going to shock everybody, but the guy who was at the Russia Today gala next to Putin, who used to run an intelligence agency. He fit the bill for counterintelligence investigation. Yeah.
That would be a good reason to start one. If he was appearing next to the leader of your adversary at a big state television, state propaganda fundraising event, or whether it was fundraising, they're giving out awards or something, that would be a good reason, I think. You couldn't argue against that.
Unless you are expressly on a mission from the United States intelligence community to appear like a double agent, which makes you, a triple or quintuple agent. I don't know. Unless you're doing that, congratulations, you're the winner of a brand new counterintelligence investigation.
And you pocketed $50,000 just because it was got a fee, right? That's what happens when you go to Russia. So that's interesting. And then he goes on to say that. What is it about his top secret security clearance was an issue, obviously. And the investigation firm called Crossfire Razor. I hadn't heard of that. Was that called Crossfire Razor? I didn't know that.
He had his very own his very own FBI investigation.
How special.
Very special. So that he was getting out of this with a single line to the FBI charge, this guy screwed the pooch in a historic way.
Right. He really might be going to jail soon, it appears. Who knows?
So, we get into the meat of this. Flynn, and I'm sure there is stuff that is in that is in classified spaces that gives, and I've heard some indication of this, that this goes just way deeper than we understand so far. But so we're getting into the meat of this, knowing that there's probably a whole bunch of even worse stuff.
Mhm.
But Mike Flynn makes a back channel request of Russia. This is stuff we've talked about, in other documents all over the place. But it's just basically, let's just focus on once Trump wins, he's talking to the Russians like they're his pals. He's talking to Kislyak, and they're talking about, there's two things. I would wager that there, in addition to the nuclear tech transfer to other countries that is specified in the wonderful and scary Cummings report from the Congress about the whole nuclear tech issue.
Yeah.
We focus on two main things that happened in December, January, which is that Jared Kushner and Mike Flynn try and get back channels to Putin, and when President Obama sanctions Russia, once they had the full understanding of how much they attacked our democracy in 2016, Obama sanctions them hard, and Mike Flynn immediately makes a back channel like a moron from the Dominican Republic, one of his calls, over consumer electronics and unencrypted lines from another country.
You shouldn't do that if you're an intelligence asset, probably. It's not
after 30 years, you might think maybe someone's listening when you're going to be a national security advisor, when you're going to call the Russian ambassador. It would occur to you. So he does that to go, oh, no, hold on, guys. You know what? Don't do anything, and we'll be in there soon, okay? We'll make it okay. And then the second issue is he's working with the Russians to help smooth the way for a vote at the United Nations to help Benjamin Netanyahu.
Yeah, well, it was to get rid of the vote. The vote was going to be critical of Benjamin Netanyahu's settlements, and Bibi thought it might be nice if they could delay it. So he asked Jared, and then Jared asked Flynn if he could make that happen. I don't know if we see the word Israel in here. Every time in these official documents, the word Israel seems to disappear. Just like, whew, that could never happen.
And I think that's why a lot of people tend to lose the story, and why we come back around, Zev, and we help focus people, because you might not see the word Israel, but if you know what they're talking about, it's like, that's the Israel thing. It wasn't just Russia. Yeah. And Turkey shows up soon. So
okay, yay. Looking out for Turkey. I like Turkey. Well, I like them appearing up in the plot lines here. So he's calling Ambassador Sergei Ivanovich Kislyak in this various December telephone phone calls. And then he goes on to say exactly what they did, which is basically break the Logan Act and do a bunch of other things that you shouldn't do.
Mm-hmm.
And then,
okay, so then there's the UN thing, like we were just saying, so we can go to the next one.
Okay.
So.
And then we did this, right? We've done this.
So no, this is the first time I believe I've seen this particular transcript. I have a small message to pass to you from Moscow, and probably you've heard about the decision taken by Moscow about action and counteraction. Yeah. Well, I appreciate it. On our phone call the other day, says Flynn, I appreciate the steps your president has taken. I think that was wise. Kislyak says, I just wanted to tell you our conversation was also taken into account in Moscow. Oh, so these guys,
but they're
working. Well, but Flynn is, while there's already a president, more than that, Flynn is helping Vladimir Putin directly. Thanks for your insights, Mike. We talked with Putin about it, and that's helping us.
Against the sitting president of the United States, who's trying to do something about the fact that the elections were just attacked.
Okay. Yeah. And Flynn knows, of course he knows, because he was part of it, that these foreign countries attacked that election to elect Trump. Trump's now president. Mike Flynn was absolutely part of it. And now he's working with the people he really works for, not the American people. So he's lying to the American people, saying, I'm going to take American national security, that's my job. No, Russian national security was his job. And he was working with Russia's president while we had a president. It's not even that he gets in and goes, I want to be partners with Russia. That was sort of their cover story. Don't you want to get along with Russia? Oh, they're such nice people. Sit them next to grandma, the Russian intelligence services. No, this is while there's another president. Mike Flynn and Donald Trump and Jared Kushner, they're all working with Vladimir Putin before they take office, and then after they take office. And this is how they end up in trouble.
Wow. I mean, this really does give you that treasonous feeling. I mean, you shouldn't, it's not just Logan Act. People sort of dismiss as, you were doing something against policy here. This is a very serious thing. These are adversarial countries, and you're basically just going right up against the president of the United States and opposing what he's doing publicly. That's the biggest priority on his plate at that moment, and you're just messing it all up for him. Not good. Not good. Kissinger was known to do this occasionally. Remember that around the Iran hostage crisis when Kissinger delayed the release of the hostages for Nixon.
There's something
Reagan.
Materially different here.
Yeah.
There's something materially different here. And this is something that there have been various talking heads who've tried to conflate those issues. Because it's not to say that being duplicitous in the background is a great thing, but the fact is back-channel diplomacy that allows both parties, especially who have nuclear weapons and a lot at stake, allowing them to save face in public or plan for things, that's not an unheard of type of statecraft. Now, if somebody is a rogue element within a nation, ours or someone else's, that adds complexity, but that's kind of normal too. In fact, if you look at what happened in the Cuban Missile Crisis, the U.S. government received two different messages from Moscow, one that appeared to be from a hardliner and one from a more softline voice that seemed to be one they could work with, and they were really, very tense. Like, because we could murder the whole planet, and what they did, at least from what it says in the unclassified space, is they said, let's go with the softer message. We're going to pretend we didn't hear from the hardliners, and we're just going to agree with them. Of course, we want to work with you diplomatically. That, and then they made back channels to the embassy. That's all statecraft. You're working with different factions, but it's not one is trying to take. You're not working for the other side as a double agent. That's what's different here.
So they're not trying to install their own government in your country, which, at the end of the day, makes this very, very distinct event from anything we've seen before in history. All right. So
that's why that's why Jim Clapper and others, and in their testimony, they're like, this was different, guys.
Yeah, we know that Russia has previously meddled in our elections, so have other countries, but this one, boy, this does not feel the same way. So take us through what happens next. James Clapper, there you go. Just mentioned him. Is he saying, should we move on? Just tell me if you want me to roll past this or.
Let's see, avoid members. Yeah, same thing.
Okay. And then here we are at more seriously fucked up stuff. Flynn even knew that he was turning to be a traitor. He already had that sense because he must have had that sense.
Well, Flynn himself recognized that his request to the Russians, quote, could be perceived as getting in the way of the Obama administration's foreign policy. By the way, when you see anything in quotes in a legal brief, it usually means, or if not almost always means, that they have a transcript they're taking from. So right. That I took that to mean that he's talking to the Russians and going, hey, we got to be careful about this. In other words, he's also planning on how to cover this up and lie to the American people even more by saying, well, this could be perceived as how it is, which is trying to betray the foreign policy of the rightful president of the United States instead of doing our thing, which is helping Vladimir Putin.
Right. So he had a pre-thought, I guess it's premeditated, that he was doing a treasonous act. And
prosecutors would call that consciousness of guilt,
right.
An act taken in furtherance of a conspiracy that that attempts to cover up that act is. Especially when you say, hey, this might look this way, let's cover it up. That is not, you don't cover up what you had for breakfast this morning.
You cover up
because there's no problem.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, wow. So it's very incriminating. It doesn't look like Mr. Flynn was just passing on a couple of messages, text messages, or, sort of innocuous phone calls to the ambassador. He was fully aware he's about to engage in a treasonous thing, and then he does this treasonous thing. And now he wants to get let off.
The things that he's done so far, and I hope you go through some of the rest of it there.
Yeah, I'm trying to
because
find it again. I've got to reboot a little that app, but I'm getting there. So
But we
keep
got
going.
cross. He gets his when you do stuff like this, you get your very own, Operation Crossfire Razor. You get your own special FBI investigation.
So really, when the FBI shows up and tapes him secretly, they have good reason to be taping him because he is very seriously under investigation.
Something to note that has come out that these are not the results of FISA warrants and the fruits of those. There were such things. We learned this when Ambassador Grinnell goes and declassifies all the names of the people who requested 702 unmaskings, which is, wait a minute, we've got a U.S. citizen who is being given privacy here on this intercept. Please tell us who this U.S. person is. And Moscow Mike Flynn's name came out. Right. That is not this.
Right.
The FBI investigation we found was criminal in nature, which means it's not. So all this garbage about FISA abuse on this poor Mike Flynn, it wasn't. I mean, the poor Mike Flynn part is bullshit, and it wasn't even FISA. This is, Title III intercepts. This is a criminal matter at this point, and the national security people also picked this up because we're going to always have the Russian ambassador and diplomatic staff on intercepts because they're all spies. So, QED. But, and
then he goes and lies about it. So then he takes on this terrible act, which is illegal anyhow, and it's treasonous, and then he goes and lies about it to the FBI. So now you've got a third major problem on his hands legally.
Yes, it's insane, treasonous, and stupid on top of it, but we can certainly add more adjectives. Let's keep going.
All right, so we looked at these. It's interesting. So then he goes, I just want to tell you that our conversation was taken well, and then your proposal that we need to act in with cold heads is exactly what is invested in the decision.
Cool head. So Mike Flynn's like, don't take any action. And remember, Donald Trump comes out and goes, oh, Vladimir Putin's very smart. He's not taking the bait from that mean old president we have right now.
Such a strong president, yes. And so there you go. Even some cause and effect there with the actual policy and then the incoming president's reaction. Really crazy stuff. And now we've talked about James Clapper. We've talked about the geopolitical adversary, and this is about how it could be perceived as getting in the way of Obama policy. We've done that part.
So he knows he's guilty, yeah. And so
some dude shows up. Who's this?
Well, that's Charlie Murphy in the Chappelle Show laughing, and my favorite joke for laughing hysterically. Yeah. But this is at this point, I'm reading this going, oh, that's right. The writ of mandamus under consideration at the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals, oral arguments are on Friday. And so it's kind of dawning on me like, this is just such perfect timing because all these briefs are coming in and John Gleason just walks in and lights the room on fire.
And the other perfect timing is that Durham is coming out soon. So this is like a pre-buttal to Durham because Durham is investigating all the same stuff as well.
It's like the last two episodes of your favorite show, of the season. That's kind of what's going on. We're all converging here.
MASH is not ending again, is it? Sorry. I love MASH. It's a good show. Good show. Am I dating myself? But it's a good show. Great show. What's your favorite show that came to an end that was a huge hit?
I don't watch TV. I read filings in Pacer.
Oh, okay.
But
suit yourself. Night Court. There was a legal element to Night Court. Did you like Night Court?
One of the greatest bass lines in the history of television themes, and one of the greatest comedies.
Really good theme, yeah. I like that a lot. It was a good show.
Yeah. It was an awesome show.
Flynn lies to the White House officials. So the lovely, I want to say Sarah Yates, but it's not. It's I can't remember. Ms. Yates.
KT McFarlane? Sally. Oh, yes, Sally Yates. And now enter
She's my favorite hero of the entire storyline because she's the one person who actually goes in there and just delays Russia's plans by 6 months with one little bit of action that she takes. I love this whole, by her going in. Yeah.
And Mike, remember Barack Obama, one of the first things he said when Donald Trump finally made it out of Trump Tower and made it to the White House to meet the current president, one of the first things Obama told him reportedly was, "Hey, by the way, Flynn, I wouldn't. Don't do it, buddy." And they did, because that was they're making the plan. That's what they're gonna do.
Right.
And so Sally Yates comes in again and goes, knock, 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 to Don McGahn. And these are both attorneys. Like, hey, can we talk, dude? Flynn, that's not going to work, homie. Come on now.
Yeah, it appears he may be compromised, and it could be subject to blackmail. Could be a bunch of things. He seems to know the Russians pretty well. So maybe he should leave. Which they shouldn't say that.
Yeah, well, yeah, no, you have a problem here, guys. Yeah. That guy is not a good candidate for NSA. And, I think we heard from testimonies like, well, what do you think we should do? Should we get rid of him? Yeah. No, having a traitor as national security advisor is a wonderful idea. Why did I even think of coming over here? No, you decide. I mean, maybe get him a new special hat or a bigger office. Who knows?
And then they wanted to know why it was such a big problem that he lied to the vice president. It's like, it's a problem if he's lying to the vice president. Really, it's a problem. You don't need us to tell you that, do you?
And that was a bullshit cover story too, because Mike Pence knew what was going on. He was picked out by Paul Manafort. They all knew what was going on. And you can see the consciousness of guilt here when Flynn is talking with K.T. McFarlane. And we remember K.T. McFarlane because she was the author of that email on the transition emails. That's the government servers that we pay for here. Saying, well, the only reason Obama is sanctioning Russia is because they gave us the election, which is not a thing you should put down in writing in general. Definitely not down on government servers that don't even need a warrant or a subpoena. It's just Bob Mueller calls over and goes, "Can you send the transition emails?" And they got them on there confessing that they know Russia gave them the election. Now they're engaged in active cover up of this treason. They can, Priebus had spoken to the boss and conveyed to Flynn that he needed to kill the story.
Wow. It's just a story. It's not even like a concern. It's just we know what happened, but we need to kill the story. Amazing. It's
not a blazing comet trail of treason that you can see from galaxies away. No, it's just a story.
Just a narrative we should try to work on. So there's Katie, and then Sean Spicer. God, we miss Sean Spicer. He was so interesting for that little period of time. And he's lying too in public based on what Flynn was saying.
Pretty much every day as well, but I forget what he specifically said. Both vouched for the story. They talked to General Shin, who had assured them the sanctions never came up in his conversation with Kislyak.
It's giving me the wheel of death, which means you're getting a lot of retweets on your very popular thread here. And so this is the rest of it now. It says, some replies were hidden by the tweet's author. I believe that's you. Thank you for sharing. And we can move on to, not only acted was not a big thing, the fool pretended like he thought,
Oh, this is the FBI shows up over and wants to talk to Flynn, and Flynn's at the White House. And Flynn's like, yeah, come on by, guys. And he's totally chill. It's like, oh, yeah, what do you need? What's up? And they're like, hey, can we talk to you? And I love the details about how they pretended like they're all on the same side, and it's all cool.
So this is what the Obamagate's about, right? This is the so-called Obamagate, where the FBI is supposedly spying on their officials. No, it's not Obamagate?
No, that's just too stupid to put any definition around by design, no doubt. This is Flynn is at the White. This is, I believe, now if we check the dates here. Go to my.
Go ahead, do that. I'm going to see if I can put up another screen so we can see these.
I think this is if you click.
I can show you.
I can do this. Hold on and show how old. So I think this is in January or so, when he's taken the office, and they come by and they're like, "Hey, we have a question for you. Did you talk to the Russians?"
Yeah.
Let's see. And he projected a very sure demeanor and exhibited no indicators of deception, and was relaxed and jocular. Speaking as someone who's trained in human intelligence, which is my initial career here, watching somebody's body language is absolutely one of the key skill sets for FBI special agents. And what that read to me was like like above average, like acting cool, because there's acting cool when you're caught, and I don't know if we're still, I may have frozen visually
I
here,
see,
but you know, so acting chill with the FBI is one thing, but they're usually you give up physical tells in your body and your facial language, your eye movements. You'll give those up, and they tend to be trained in that kind of thing. And then there's somebody who's nuts, who kind of is in their own little world, and that's kind of how this read to me.
Which is leaning on acting a lot here.
Well, yeah, it's not like he's pretending to be like, oh, I'm caught. Let me be. Oh, because you will position things more, with more consciousness than you normally do. And this is how the FBI gets you: is they can tell you're hiding something. Why? Because you're a little too chill. I mean, somebody who is really not trying to hide something, or is, wow, did I do something wrong? I wasn't
concerned.
really doing it. You look a little concerned, or can I help you? Is there anything else I can get you? Because I'm nervous, because the FBI's here.
Yeah.
Because sometimes they come before you go to federal penitentiary.
Yeah.
So that's cause for nervousness.
Well, maybe you're concerned because somebody else in your administration might have been doing some initiatives, so that would be a matter of concern too. You wouldn't be acting that chill either. Sorry, what did I do there? Sorry. There you go. So this is the second part of that. So I don't know what's in here. We're looking at it for the first time. Michael Flynn's links to Russia, Wall Street Journal, and then Kislyak was the only member of the Russian government with whom he had substantive conversations. He named Russia.
He pretends.
Right.
He pretends like, oh yeah, Russia's our enemy. So this is, I don't know if, it's not just like consciousness of guilt. It's more like he's playing the FBI for idiots. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Or maybe he thinks there's something going on where he's untouchable, so he doesn't have to worry about what the FBI thinks. I don't know. I'm not a traitor, so I can't look entirely in the mind. But I mean, just this is all really weird to be caught. Like, hey, Mike, what's up? Oh, hi, FBI.
But isn't the Republican Party arguing that this particular call, where they didn't say that they were interviewing him, even though it was basically an official interview, isn't this one of the things that they're saying they contravened his rights, or that they should have said, this is an official interview about your foreign investigation or something like that?
I believe that Judge Gleason gets into this, that we should not treat. Well, first of all, it doesn't matter if you lie to the FBI about a question that they're investigating. Mm-hmm. They don't have to Mirandize you. This is not about you're being arrested for a crime or something like that. This is, they're investigating. The FBI is very busy, so if they come and ask you questions about something serious like sanctioning a foreign nation that's just attacked our democracy, it should be assumed that they're not there for their health, that they're there to investigate something. If you lie to them, that's on you. But furthermore, Judge Gleason goes further in this document, and I forget if I cover it specifically here, where he says we shouldn't, I don't think I do. He says we shouldn't treat Mike Flynn with the same standards that we would even for regular citizens, although that still makes him guilty. But this guy was entrusted with our dearest secrets. He had sworn the most serious of oaths, and he betrayed them utterly. And he was supposed to be smarter than this. He was the head of an intelligence agency. He was going to be our national security advisor. He doesn't know not to lie to the FBI.
Mm-hmm. Unbelievable, really. He was buying time, presumably. I mean, they must have been panicking. They must have been trying to figure out a way to get beyond this. You would think. I don't know. I'm guessing there. There must have been some rationale to lying to the FBI on a matter like this. Maybe not.
Or they're nuts. Yeah. Or, I think some of these cases, we've looked at Jared Kushner and we go, God, this guy is dumb. Mm. He's admitting, when I read the transcripts of Kushner, and we covered this in an earlier episode of Narativ, Kushner's just admitting to meeting with Sergei Gorkov from the sanctioned VEB bank, one of Putin's favorite spy banks, that's been cut off by Obama. And he's just meeting him in his office, even though none of that should be happening. And he's like, yeah, whatever, I did it. So he's kind of dumb. Flynn, I don't know if it's a mix of he's just an idiot, or he's delusional, or he thinks that none of this will matter because his guy, we're going to have Jeff Sessions in there as Attorney General. Maybe he's already envisioning a future where they this is something I was nervous about, where they have a purge of
Mm.
people that can investigate or prosecute, or they have people who are so craven that they start firing inspectors general, stop prosecutions, like exactly what's happening to
Mm.
Flynn. Maybe he's just like, dude, we won. You lost, we won. So hi, FBI, which is a terrible attitude to take. Or you better be damn sure that you have one, because it's going to be ugly when they do get around to you. But yeah, Flynn is insouciant. He is without a care in the world.
Interesting. Can you hear me better? Is this any better sound
Yep,
wise?
perfect.
Okay, I don't know what happened there. apologize. I'm trying to open up these inserts here, because now we actually get to the United Nations and the UN vote. So walk us through what's going on here, because this is, we've discussed it before, but this is when it starts becoming a different story. It becomes a story about Israel, and it also includes Jared Kushner.
And they're also coordinating, I believe, with Egypt on this to try and keep this vote from coming to a head. There's not too much more in here about that. It's just, this is one of the two main things in this so far in this prosecution that they're dealing with, which is lying about Kislyak with regards to sanctions and the UN vote. So
here's why I think this might be a factor in why they're trying to do what they're doing. Are they trying to stop Flynn from flipping on Kushner? Like, I don't know if the Kushner's activities at this time were potentially illegal, but let's say potentially illegal is okay to say. And if they were potentially illegal, can Flynn flip on Kushner?
You mean, why are they trying so hard to show that Mike Flynn won't have any legal consequences whatsoever?
Because that's basically what they're going to, right? I mean, they're pulling out all the stops to try and delete history on this entire thing. Why would you do that?
It's again, I don't think it's about Kushner, who knows that he has already pushed all his chips into the middle of the table on this bet. I think it's the thousands of other people who were money mules, who helped stuff foreign money into super PACs, who have already gotten not that friendly FBI interviews. And they have not had their attorneys, or maybe they haven't hired attorneys. They certainly haven't called and said, we're willing to proffer today. What do you need? And they may be going, hold on, Trump's still in. No. Barr's in. No.
What happens?
We're cool. We're cool. Because who among us wants to be the guy who goes, you know what? I think this morning, of my own accord, I'm going to cut my losses and admit that I betrayed this country, and hope to only get 4 years in a federal penitentiary where I'll have ample time to learn the difference between the tattoos of MS-13 and the Latin Kings. Who among us in the political class or PR firms who should have filed FARA, or whoever who wants to go, I want to be the first one to recognize an Armenian power tattoo in a federal pen?
Right. So they really are trying to get Flynn off for what seems to be big reasons. They're not going to succeed, it doesn't look like, and so Flynn is going to need to flip again.
I think, and we haven't even seen what the Uniform Code of Military Justice is going to do to Flynn, because I believe, as a retired lieutenant general, I believe he's still beholden, I believe. So
interesting. So then they remind him about his conversations with Kislyak. These are the FBI guys.
Well, they always give you a couple chances.
Right.
The FBI will come by first, and they're like, "Hey, so did you happen to talk to the Russians?" And they know that you might go, "No."
Yeah.
And then you'll call your attorney, and then you'll talk about it, and your attorney, if he or she is good, will go, "Did you?" And you'll, "Maybe." And then you'll get that second one, and they'll go, "Now let's see how bad of trouble this guy's in." They'll go, "Did you talk to Sergei Kislyak?" Not just the Russians. Yeah. "Did you talk to Sergei Kislyak about sanctions by any chance?" And then you have the chance to go, "Yes," and I don't want to say anymore until my attorneys have talked to you. Or you go, "No." And when you lie that second time, that's when you get, "Hey, you just won an 18 U.S. Code subsection 1001 charge." There you go.
Wow. So he's not in good state at the end of this interview, and then he's fired for that. Fired for lying.
Yeah, he's fired. He's fired because the FBI's on him, and if they keep him in there any longer, he's going to start getting prosecuted. They might start talking about all the other stuff he's done.
Right. And so officially he gets fired for lying. Only a few days later, maybe even the next day, I don't remember, Donald Trump decides to, in a moment of radical transparency for this president, decides to admit that it actually was being fired because of the Russia thing. Is that correct? Or am I jumping scandals here? No,
I think you're jumping scandals.
jumping scandals.
I
I'm sorry.
think
That's Comey.
when they fired Comey, he said,
Yes,
"I did it so he wouldn't look at Russia."
Sorry, you got me right. Sorry.
Which is a hoax, which they made up, the do-nothing Democrats. But I fired the FBI director like nobody does, so he wouldn't look at Russia. Which doesn't matter.
Right. I apologize for that. I get my storylines confused.
It's hard to keep it up.
It's late at night, man. So here comes Sally Yates. We've done this part, right? So she's amazing. And then I'm just looking at the clock here. We're almost out of time. We're back to the judge, and his. You've got references to Genovese and Gambino families all the way up and down here. Why would you do something like that? Why would you bring that family up? As if there's something to do with the Trumps.
And I think it's something Trump and Gleason share in common as appreciations for those two families. So
fine Italian families. And what else we got here? Flynn pleads guilty.
So Flynn pleads guilty, and this is after Mueller is on board. After they fire, they fire Comey. Mueller comes on, and no surprise. What's the first gigantic counterintelligence file on Mueller's desk and everybody else's desk? The most fearsome legal team ever to be assembled. Mm-hmm. They've got this Crossfire Razor and other, no doubt, investigations on their desk, and so they're probably they're telling Flynn that he and his son are both never going to see the light of day again, and so he flips, kind of,
and provides substantial assistance.
On a conditional promise by the government to file a substantial system in connection with his sentencing on that charge. He did for a while, and then he stopped. That is later on in this. That's how we get here, is he all of a sudden goes, wait a minute, no, I'm going to unplead. And is that because somebody told him something about how this was going to go? That don't worry, we will never let you go down, Mike. And so put up a fight.
There was this whole leaked conversation between the president's lawyer. Let me see if I can throw this up here. Do you remember this? With this little phone call where this was the president's lawyer at the time calling Flynn's lawyer saying, I can't remember the language. It's a little aggressive. And you can read it maybe better than I can because that's so far away from me. But it was one of these conversations with.
Hey, Rob, this is John again. Maybe I'm sympathetic. I understand your situation, but let me see if I can, state it in starker terms. If you have, and it wouldn't surprise me if you've gone to make a deal with work with the government.
Yeah. And then it goes on, and here's the second part. I think says can't read it.
So Trump's lawyer John Dowd voicemail to Michael Flynn's lawyer Robert Kellner. So this is Trump's lawyer John Dowd. Is like, well, so hi. It wouldn't surprise us if you have, after Flynn mulled out of a joint defense agreement. Yeah. So basically, Flynn and Trump were at least flirting with the idea. I can't tell if what that language says, that they were in a joint defense agreement, which means their attorneys are all working together, which means they're all part of the same conspiracy.
Exactly.
Which is why Trump can't pardon him and hasn't yet.
Exactly. And so they were about to, I think they had started the process, and then basically Flynn's lawyer and Flynn disappeared out of the process, made Trump's lawyers think, maybe they're turning on us. And then there's this friendly phone call, starker terms, and a little leaning on Flynn's attorney about getting Flynn back on their side, which lo and behold, Flynn is now back on Trump's side.
That's sometime in 2018. This is November 22nd, 2017. This date would have been around the time it's about to be announced that Flynn is pleading guilty. Right. And so Trump, clearly he's pulled back. So he hasn't come back around to, oh no, Trump will save me. It's very clear at this point, and you can tell behind the scenes is a few days before, I think November 30th or December 1st of 2017, when they announce, oh no, Flynn has flipped. Right. This is Trump's lawyers trying to get in touch, like, so did you guys take a deal or something? Yeah. While they're very nervous about something, for something that's just a hoax that there's no big deal about.
Seem very nervous, and there's a tape of it, and there's, it looks like they're pressuring the guy, maybe even obstructing justice by doing so. I don't know. Could be.
Could be. And we have today, a couple hours ago, tonight, Chief DC U.S. District Justice Beryl Howell unsealed a previously secret grand jury opinion from April the 2nd, 2018, in an unspecified investigation into money laundering, sanctions violations, and defrauding the United States.
Oh.
So that was during the era of Mueller. And it involves an attorney for whom the crime fraud exemption would have applied, meaning there were that this attorney would not have been able to claim privilege anyhow because of the crimes and frauds involved. If you're an attorney and you're aware of such crimes, you cannot hold that in, and you're not your communications with that client are not subject to privilege. And this person wasn't even acting in the capacity of an attorney anyhow. So there's some even more dirt coming out from the District of DC tonight. So
interesting.
There's a lot going on.
Yeah, well, that's really interesting stuff. Huh. Okay, let's finish this off quickly, and then let everyone go to bed. This has been an interesting bedtime storytelling by you, Eric. Really well done.
By Judge Gleason.
Yes.
This is not my work. This
bedtime
is
stories by Judge Gleason.
And the FBI and Mueller. I am merely the interpreter, and hopefully, make it somewhat entertaining. But this is their work and their struggle to keep all of us in a free society that operates under the rule of law, and that's how serious this is. I try to make it fun, but these guys are, we're fighting. This is good versus evil, man. This is. Do you want the mob or the rule of law, judges and good law enforcement officers and all that? And it's couldn't be more important.
And I keep reminding folk that this is when your legacy actually matters, like where you stand actually matters when history looks back on this moment, because you don't want to be on the wrong side of this one. And I can't believe these GOP senators are still running around hiding from reporters when kind of now is the time to decide how you want to be perceived by future generations. I mean, it should have been earlier, but by now you really should have. I don't know, it's my opinion.
Maybe they already know how history is going to perceive them, and the shame that they show is plenty of testimony about who they are.
Yeah, if they can't make up their minds, they shouldn't be senators anyhow. This gives me the loop of death, or whatever it's called, the circle of death. So I can't show any more of it. But maybe we should just say goodnight, because that sort of takes up the whole show. There was one other bit of news, actually. Wait, there was other news, right?
Zev always has news at the end. All right.
Well, because you were telling us earlier on about and I'll let you pronounce this dude's name, Mr. Benkowski.
Benkowski, I think is how it goes.
So he was an assistant attorney and is no longer.
Oh no, he was the head of the criminal division for the Department of Justice. So he was in charge of all the crimes being charged, and just as all these other bombshells are dropping about the treasonous acts that put Donald Trump in, just as they really hit Benkowski, who worked for the Russian mafia's number one bank, Alpha Bank, on behalf, in the law firm of Kirkland and Ellis, which is
Bill Barr's former. Bill Barr used to work there.
I forget. Did Kavanaugh,
I think, used to work there. Acosta used to work there. Yeah, a few people used to work there.
It's kind of a notorious firm, even in Chicago, which kind of doesn't look that harshly at things connected to the mob, because where are you going to go? Even there, they're like, oh, those Kirkland Ellis. Wow. Yeah, he's from Kirkland Ellis.
They hired a guy to be in charge of the criminal prosecution department who could probably have to recuse himself from every mob investigation, because he used to work for a law firm where they used to represent them.
It's funny. Every time I see one of these prosecutions go with his name on it, it just warms the cockles of my heart. I'm like, Brian Benkowski, boy, that guy who's never run a prosecution before, boy, he took down the bad guys. And these are the things that keep me, cheery and optimistic when other people are like, how do you see any light in this darkness? And it's me watching some horribly mobbed up thing being taken down criminally, and this guy Benkowski's name is on it. It's like, he got the bastards.
He said it was the tribute of his life, it's the honor of his life to be working for the Department of Justice.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure he's had a great time, and I'm sure he's really looking forward to gardening or bocce ball or whatever he's going to do.
Or future indictments against himself. But that, who knows? Then there's also, of course, his replacement, because Bill Barr does not like to leave a position open there at the Department of Justice. In comes Mr. Rabbit. Honestly, that's his name. Chief of Staff, I think, of... is that his name? I think I got it right. He's the Chief of Staff of Bill Barr right now.
I don't know about that, but I would like to just mention quickly that while this has been going on in the district court, up at the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals, we've now also had, and you can look forward to some of my threads that will follow because they're just so juicy, we have the answer in Circuit Court from Judge Sullivan about all of this. We have another answer from Benkowski and others on behalf of Bill Barr, arguing why they should be able to turn back time. And unplead, unguilty, and untreason Mike Flynn. Oral arguments start Friday. So all of this is coming to a head, and
we haven't even seen Durham yet. We haven't even got to Durham. It's like we're prejudging all of this.
And it should be remembered that John the Bull Durham, one of the most fearsome mob prosecutors of the 20th and 21st century, he became the U.S. Attorney in the state of Connecticut, which is a very important district for mob activity these days, particularly. It was he who Barr said, "You go check out and make sure that these guys all did their jobs right with this Russia investigation." And it's interesting because we know it's not a Russia investigation. It's a corruption and foreign interference and treason investigation. And the countries are, we know there's Russia, there's China, there's Qatar, there's Saudi, there's Israel, there are corrupt elements. So go find out about this Russia stuff, as if Russia just, came into being in December of 2015 or something.
By the way, Lisa Page has a new job. Did you see this? She's now
I know
she's a consultant at MSNBC. She's interesting because she might be one of the people who gets attacked by Durham and may even face prosecution by Durham. So that'll be interesting.
I would be surprised by that. Let's go back and look at Strzok and Page, and I don't have enough information on what their relationship was like, or I couldn't really care less. I would say that if that was the communication of two people with an overly personal relationship, I've never read more boring texts. But Lisa Page is an expert in Eastern European organized crime finance, if I've got my history correct. Mm-hmm. And Peter Strzok was like the number one Russian spy catcher of the FBI. He quarterbacked Op Ghost Stories, which busted the Russian illegals program of long-term deep cover Russian spies living in the United States targeting various people, something I know quite a bit about, actually. Mm-hmm. He's the guy who busted them and sent a bunch home, not all, a bunch, in 2010, and traded them back for Sergei Skripal, who was the mole we had, or the British had, inside Russian intelligence. That's the guy they hit with Novichok. So in other words, who would know more about Russian mob money than Lisa Page, and who would know more than Russian spies than Peter Strzok?
Yeah. And
watching Lisa Page reemerge as this voice after she's been treated so terribly, I am really looking forward to see what things that she can say in an unclassified setting. I think she has a lot. I'll bet she has a lot of interesting observations.
When people don't have to speak on behalf of their official positions and they're not currently under investigation, there is so much that they can say once that muzzle has been taken off, and she'll be able to say.
Muzzle gets. Sorry, I cut you off.
No, go ahead.
That muzzle gets taken off not when you're out of the job, but it gets loosened up when the relevant prosecutions are wrapping up. Mm-hmm.
So we're about to see exactly what she knows. And finally today we should say, look at this. Donald Trump is still getting 40% of approval rating, which is kind of amazing. But it's down 10% over the last month. The lowest it's been is 35% according to Gallup. I don't know why it won't get any lower than that, but we'll see in the next few weeks because the news is not looking particularly sunshiny lately.
I think somewhere between 16% unemployment, the plague, and fairly obvious treason. I don't know; those numbers could go lower. And just so everyone remembers, Nixon was at 24 to 27%
Yeah.
approval ratings when he went out. So it can always get worse for Trump.
It can always get worse for Trump, and it needs to, apparently, in order for there to be a real tipping point in the elections. Although I suspect it doesn't need to be as bad as or go as low as Nixon did. Sorry. That is our show for tonight. Thank you for joining us. I should tell you that you can support Narrative's independent journalism by going to patreon.com/narrative for $5 a month. That's all it takes to support our work over here. And we'll be back on, when are we back? We're back on Friday with a really interesting show. A follow-up to last week's show with Stephen Hoffenberg. We've got a big story coming.
There's a lot happening, isn't there?
Yeah, we might show up sooner because we like these little impromptu things. Thank you for tonight's bedtime story, Eric, and we'll see you again very, very soon on Narrative.
Sleep tight.
Okay, cheers. Have a good one.